knight's move.
Shit. Oh, my rook, what am I doing? The rook! The bishop! The queen!
First position, we will be first showcasing check and then a checkmate. So check is simply where we're attacking our opponent's king with one or more of our pieces. So what would this look like? This is like putting your queen to b8. This puts the enemy king in danger as our queen, which can move infinitely ranged on the back rank, is attacking our opponent's king. This means our opponent's king is in danger and they must react. They can react in one of three ways. They can first capture the checking piece, block the attack, or they can run with the king. So in this case, we'll be showing how all three can work. So first of all, we'll first look at how capturing works. This is when you use one of your pieces, in this case the black queen, to capture the attacking piece, like this. Now because the white queen is gone, there is no more threat against our king, getting us out of check. Another option is to block. Blocking would look like this. Now our knight is in the way of the white queen capturing our king, hence it's a block. We've blocked the check successfully, allowing our king to not be in danger anymore. Finally, if here white did not decide to check us, let's say, and decided to instead move his pawn, and we moved our pawn, we can then see the final version where black can successfully run their king away. This is because the king, which is in danger when it's on g8, escapes out of the check because now it's out of the queen's range. Now, using this, we can then infer what a checkmate is. A checkmate is simply a check that cannot be stopped, meaning one of these three methods do not work. In this case, a checkmate can be seen when we play queen takes g7, checkmate. This is because, first of all, we cannot take the queen. Why? Well, our king would like to take, but it's covered by the bishop, meaning we would still be in check if we took. This means it's not a viable option. The second is to look for a block, but because it's directly in front of the king, no pieces could even block this because there's no distance in between the queen and the king, making it a more powerful check. And finally, the king can't run because f8 and h8 are covered, and it's a check. This is what's called checkmate. If you would like an example, you can, after white plays bishop to e5, find checkmate in 1 for black. If you said queen b1, checkmate, you would be correct. This is because we put the white king in check from our queen, and white cannot execute any of the three. We cannot take the black queen, we cannot block the check, as all of these squares are unavailable to our pieces, and finally our king cannot run as it's blocked by the pawns. The next type of way you can win or lose a game is by timing out. So timing out is pretty much when you're playing a game, like I have started now, and your time at the bottom here hits 0. So what does this mean? It means you've used up all of your time and you lose the game. Now, for the final way you can win a game, we'll be discussing abandonment. Abandonment is pretty much how it sounds. Your opponent just abandons the game and you win. It's quite simple to understand. Your opponent just leaves or their Wi-Fi disconnects and you win because they've left the game for a long enough period on time. So on chess.com it does it automatically for you, which is quite useful. Now, the main way people make draws in chess is a bit different. So the main way is actually just offering a draw. So in chess, unlike other things, you can just offer your opponent a draw, which means each of you score half a point. So in this case, offering a draw would look like the following. You click the draw offer button, and this sends a draw offer to your opponent. Then you make your move, and your opponent will decide whether they want to. Ignore this canceled a draw offer, it is still going. Now your opponent will either accept or decline. In this case, my opponent decided to decline the draw offer. So basically what this means is they don't want to agree to a draw. Generally speaking, it's fine to accept or decline, but if you think you're better or winning, as in this case my opponent seems to think so, it is fine to plan. This is the most common way to offer a draw. Now, you can also accept draws. So, for the next result, we'll be talking about stalemate. So stalemate is actually quite like checkmate, in the sense where your opponent's king has no legal move. The difference is, unlike a checkmate, where your opponent's king is in check and they can't move, stalemate is exclusively when your opponent cannot move. So, let's see a quick example. So, after the move queen f7, as we can see, the game is already declared a draw. But why? It's drawn by stalemate, because the king cannot move to any of these available squares because our queen cuts it completely off. Now you might be saying, well, who cares? They should be forced to move, and then I'll take their king and win. Unfortunately, this is not how chess works. It is called a stalemate in the sense where it's unfair to say that you lost because you were not checkmated. Now, the next way a game can end is threefold repetition. So, what is threefold repetition? In short, threefold repetition is when the position repeats itself not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now, a keynote is this does not have to be consecutive. Hence, the threefold could break at some point from repeating in a row, but if it repeats 3 times, it's a draw. So let's look at an example. So the most common example of this is perpetual check. Hence, you just check your opponent until they eventually have to make a draw because the position now has repeated. Sorry, not after this. After queen g6, it's a draw because the game has ended, seeing as the position is repeated once from the starting position, then it repeated again here, and then the final repetition for the draw. Note, something to note is, let's say here, for example, we moved our queen to e6 and our opponent played c2. We could continue making checks towards the draw, this being the second repetition, and then this being the third one for the draw. So yeah, if it's a perpetual check, it's just, you could keep checking, and if you intend to make a draw, you can just keep checking. Threefold repetition is a bit different in the sense where you're not just spamming checks, but it's the exact same concept. So, for the final way you can make a draw is the 50 move rule. Now this rule is a bit complicated to understand at first. So, how does it work? There are 2 criteria that have to be met before a 50 move rule is made. So first, it has to be 50 moves, meaning you have to make at least 50 moves for the rule to be called. And in these moves, a pawn can't move and a capture cannot occur. So what does this mean? Pretty much, if you make a capture or a pawn move, it resets the counter back down to 0. Hence why the rule is so rare, because generally speaking, there are pawn moves and captures, and typically when there are not, you can just agree to a draw. So here would be a bit of an example of where you could see it, where both sides' kings are just moving around, and eventually, see here the move count. Once white plays their 51st move, the game will automatically be declared a draw. Pretty much because neither side can make any progress though, it typically ends in a draw by mutual agreement. Now, where do you see this more commonly? In endgames where one side is pushing for the win and the other side is trying to draw, like rook versus bishop, rook versus knight, rook and bishop versus rook, the 50 move rule can often save the defender as the attacker doesn't have enough time to secure the win. Furthermore, it can be used to claim a draw if your opponent is trying to win, let's say up a queen, and they don't know how. After 50 moves, you can declare the game a draw.